This is a very quick one, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you can hear the truck roaring by. Just very briefly, this is James Dellingpod. Uh, he seemed a quirky Brit. I looked him up, thought, he's a bit quirky, but I love the Brits. We'll have a good chat. He seems like a jolly good tally-ho kind of chap. And I can practice my English accent. And what a fucking clown. What an absolute fucking whack job clown. Now, is he sincere whack job clown? Yes, he is. So I apologize, James, but dude, next time you have a guest on, why don't you look him up instead of going, I know nothing about you. If you know nothing about me, why'd you have me on? But listen to him when he said, oh, I liked Ben Shapiro. I nearly vomited on the spot. And he's typical of this idiot class that want to talk about child sacrifice. And I know they do. Of course, I said, do you know that Lord Rothschild has ever sacrificed a child or Henry Kissinger? This I know because I read it on the internet. Maybe, maybe not. We know this stuff goes on, but let's focus on national security and getting the American military to free us from this parasite. And no, we just disengage. We disengage from the system. Yeah. So if you can stomach this, I'm just fucking over interviews. I'll talk to Jeff Rance and that's about it. That's the only person that's sincere that I've come across who interviewed Mary Silva. I'll put the best bits where I just tell him he's a useless and just hang up. I just couldn't bear it any longer. It's not about me being nice. If I'm going to be the only one that just tells these people to fuck off because I want it on the record. So when Mary Silva enters Congress, I'm going to remember all these people that said it's pointless, it's worthless. Mary Silva's going to enter Congress. You watch. I leave you with this clown. Let me finish section 219 video today. Talk soon. All you're interested in is this little fetish you have. I'm sick of you fuckers. Fuck yourself. Get. No, let me keep going. Oh, I'm so pissed. That idiot. I thought, he seems like an intelligent person. Let's have a chat. What a mistake. I'm losing my mind. Look at, it's pointless. We should disengage. Let's disengage. Yeah, they're hoping you'll disengage. Yes, that's exactly what they want. They want you to. Could you believe this half-wit even believes that? This is the wacky fucking internet that I am so fucking sick of. Look how, Mary Silva, a congressional candidate, and she's getting up in front of 300. Wow, tell me more. Not interested. They don't even research. She goes, I watched something from 5 years ago. I don't know, but if you're having on a fucking guest, I'd want to research them and see what they're about. The only guy that did that was Geopolitics and Empire. He actually read my stuff, skimmed through it, and had intelligent questions. It was a pleasure to talk with him. Wasn't a perfect interview, but it was a pleasure to talk with him. And then I just get these people, I don't know who you are. Tell me about yourself. These people don't even want to work for a living. It's like, do some fucking effort, dude. Look up your guest. I mean, first thing I did was look him up. And I was going, it's a bit dodgy. Oh, okay, we'll go. I want to speak. I like the English. Good fun. Bit of humor. You see, look, the Phoenicians. And you're going to fucking die, you dumb, useless cunt. And all he wants to do is talk about the child sacrifice and the Phoenicians and the anus, this infatuation. You tell them, do you know Lord Rothschild? Well, I read it on the internet. It must be true. It's not whether it's a lie or whether it's a true. Are you going to engage in politics or not? Are you going to enlist the US military to do the dirty work for you to end these people? I have changed the freaking world. I talked in the language of national security. You want to get the interest of powerful people? Start talking money and national security. And it's freaking worked. And people like that freaking clown are going to end us because that's the internet. I read it on the internet. I watched it on the internet. I'm delving deep. I'm watching YouTube videos. I read a PDF. And that's what we're faced with. How many times have I pushed Mary Silva and Lee Levina? They're not interested. Nobody's interested. Literally nobody. I've never had, well, that sounds interesting. A congressional candidate talking about these things. One person. But you know who? You know that one person is?
Welcome to the Dellingpod with me, James Dellingpod. And I know I always say I'm excited about this week's special guest. But before we meet him, let's have a word from one of our sponsors. Welcome to the Dellingpod, Brendan O'Connell. I first came across you about, 5 years ago when I was just sort of beginning my journey down the rabbit hole. And I listened to some of your stuff and I was thinking, this guy is he's far out. He's just like, I mean, he knows crazy shit. And if it's true, then we should all be scared. But this is too much for me right now. He's too intense.
Me,
As the years,
intense? Never.
as the years have progressed, Brendan, I think I see you as being less out there than I thought at the time in my early learning days. I suppose that's where we all end up in the end. Before we go on, tell me about yourself. I mean, I know very little about you.
Oh, gee, where to begin? Well, I'm 55 years old. I was born in Perth, Western Australia, home of the British expats. So here in
And
England,
shark attack capital of the world, pretty much
yeah,
these days.
I was a big time surfer, and it started in 1997. That sharks just started eating everyone. But anyway, don't let that afraid. That they're allergic to pasty poms. You get a pass. They like tanned Australians. Don't worry.
I used to. I spent 10 days in Perth, and every day I swam off City Beach.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I was looking at, that there's that sort of pier, isn't there? And I was looking at around all the heads bobbing in the water, and we were all looking at each other, thinking, well, at least there are other people here. I'm going to take my chances. The person next to me is going to reduce the risk of it being me that gets chopped.
Exactly. You
Yeah,
understand.
yeah.
But that started 1997. No one can explain it. But anyway, yes, great big great white started eating people. But don't let that put you off. Beautiful beaches, great people. But I'm sorry, Western Australia went crazy during COVID, which I'm sure you know all about. My story is very long, so long it took a 1,018-page UN refugee document. But basically, I attended. This is the short version. I'm a registered nurse by trade. Haven't worked for a long time. I was heading back to do my nursing re-registration. 2009 Operation Cast Lead was in full swing, where 20% of Gaza was destroyed. I got into a confrontation with a Jewish activist at a Friends of Palestine rally. I called him a racist Jew with a religion of racism, hate, homicide, and ethnic cleansing, and I suggest pretty much standard knowledge now. I had Jewish friends. I was no anti-Semite, the usual. But I know the difference between Zionism, Talmud, and a whole host of the subtleties of Jewish power. I'm a big fan of Jewish activist Paul Eisen and his writings on Jewish power. I mean, I know he's friends with Jeremy Corbyn. Don't hold that against him. So just to, I'm not an anti-Semite, but the confrontation led to, I made a video and he tried to hit me in the face. Long story, it's all online. And the police came around and called me an anti-Semite and they threw me in jail for 3 years. 3 years, most of it in maximum security. But I was discussing with state counterterrorism, Israeli espionage, and the fact that all their equipment was all Israeli and they were in bed with China and Russia, and I was laughing at state counterterrorism. They didn't appreciate it, but that's the short story. I ended up in Iran. I ended up in Lebanon. I'm now in Mexico, and through many, many contacts from incredibly wide and diverse areas, including people who hang out with the Windsors, Tony Abbott, the former Prime Minister's old crew, Colonel James McMahon, Minister Joe Francis. They were good guys, ultra-conservative, but good guys. Trying to clean out corruption, invited me out for beers, to which I told them I spat in their face, basically, because I'm a very fiery sort of personality. And again, this is the short version. If I seem a bit all over the place, it's because I sometimes don't know where to start. I don't know where to start. It's been an adventure, and it's the biggest espionage case in history. If you're worried about Epstein and sexual blackmail rings, of which there are dozens, Epstein is the decoy, he's the nice one, they get way worse than Epstein, then you need to be worried about the fact that every single piece of critical infrastructure, including in the UK, Europe, and especially the United States, is run by Israeli/Russian/Chinese companies. That's the short version. I hand it back to you.
Well, Brandon, where do I? There are
I don't know
so
where
many
to start.
threads
I
I
don't know where
could
to
pick
start.
up on there. First of all, just what's it like being in prison for 3 years?
F. Scott Fitzgerald says the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. It was both horrible and both enlightening. I got so much gossip out of that jail. Who runs Western Australia? The police deal all the drugs. Who's murdered who? Which police officer's murdered and working with this criminal? Half the cafes and restaurants are all drug dealers. The amount of corruption in the prison system in Western Australia is actually quite good compared to the rest of the country, let alone the US or even the UK. But even UK coppers would come out to Australia because there was a shortage of police, and they would leave because this is cowboy land. It's you learn so much in jail, so much. Like I met Roger Reeves, the top transporter for the Medellin cartel. I met him in jail. I got his book published, Smuggler. I don't know. I've got 500 stories branching off the tree of the main story, and that's why I get flustered. I don't even know where to begin.
No, I can see that. Well, is the food really, really shit?
Generally, yes and no. It wasn't, well, for me, because I'm a bit of a nutritionist and a bit of a health
This is
advocate.
what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's garbage. And but Western Australia is not as bad as New Zealand. You would think progressive New Zealand. I ended up in New Zealand. They locked me up in a maximum security Mount Eden jail for months. I could have left. It's another long story. I got a tip. Someone said, I know the 2IC at the Crown Solicitor's Office. Everyone knows about your case. Try and get asylum in New Zealand. Think I'm being New Zealand bro, cuzzy bro. So, that's this. They hate Israel. I'll play off the Labor. They're all a bunch of commies and they hate Israel. That's what I'll do. Well, big mistake. Although the prison officers were great and the coppers were very nice and polite, my God, their prison system is just abysmal. If you're not a tranny or a gay Afghan warlord escaping persecution due to being found with your lover down by the river, I learned so much. The Iraqis were there. It's a scam. The whole refugee. Basically, New Zealand is reserved for Afghanis. So if you're an Afghani refugee, somehow you find $50,000 to get your fake Malaysian passport to get your trip in, and you get automatic asylum. And I just sat there thinking, what the hell is this scam? Would you like to go down that path, James? I just learned so much about the scam of the whole refugee garbage.
We can talk about whatever rocks your boat. I mean, the refugee thing is, we're all suffering that one, aren't we?
Well, the same people that blew up Iraq and Muslim countries are the same people letting them in. Yisra Hassoun, it's topical, right? It's topical right now. Yisra Hassoun was the 2IC of the Shin Bet, the number one recruiter for the Shin Bet. That's the Israeli FBI. He was a Syrian Jew born in Damascus. Most people don't realize we have this blonde-haired, blue-eyed Khazar view of being Jewish. There's Ethiopian Orthodox Jews, 3,000 years Jewish, Moroccan Jews, Iraqi Jews, Syrian Jews. And remember, most of them refused to leave their countries until Jews started blowing up. Bolshevik Jews started blowing up their synagogues in Iraq and Syria. So you have a Syrian Jew born in Damascus. He's basically an Arab who speaks Arabic, who's now the top recruiter for the Shin Bet. And Yisra Hassoun said to the European Union, directly to their faces in articles, that if you don't support us, you will have jihadis in your bed and in your kindergartens. That was the threat. So if you want to know who's running all these people up into your countries, who first, via Odiginon, got the United States to blow up the Middle East, and then run, because what they want to do, they want to make Muslims who fight back, they make them terrorists, and then they say, come and kill them for us. So we're going to make our Muslim problem, again, Muslims who fight back, into your problem. We're going to make it into UK's problem. We're going to make it into the European Union's problem. We're going to make it into the US problem. So you'll come and kill them for us. Because you have this tiny, tiny, tiny group of hardcore Rothschild-related, high level. These are English gentlemen Jews. These are not your standard. These are
Yes.
very high level people. These are cultured European Jews who looked at. I mean, they don't even like Chabad Lubavitch. They're their brown shirts. They'll get rid of them when it suits them. But these are the people who are creating this chaos. So the average Brit doesn't go, gee, the London central bankers are just destroying this country and turning it into a prison and running these operations via their networks. It's not MI6. It's a network within MI6, MI5, running down through French and German intelligence, even Swiss intelligence, and running down into Bibi and Likud. And when you understand that system, you'll understand why they have to keep the average British citizen very busy worrying about getting their heads lopped off by a Muslim extremist, rather than the bankers who are robbing everyone blind and destroying, both European, UK culture.
Yes. I used to be one of those people who used to think, and I like 10 years ago, I used to be one of those trenchant, outspoken, conservative stroke libertarian commentators who wrote pieces about everything from the free markets to the jihadi threat. And I was completely taken in by it, as most people are, because, I mean, we're programmed, aren't we, by the newspapers, by movies, by etc., etc. I had no idea in those days that most of the terrorist attacks are actually false flags staged by the three-letter agencies, including, I think. I mean, have you ever looked into the occasion when this soldier, a fusilier, was beheaded in the streets in Woolwich by these two savage jihadis?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I remember the tube bombing, 2005. That was completely exposed.
That was. Am I right in thinking that wasn't done by? I mean, the Muslims involved were just patsies.
Oh, they're patsies. Half of them are drug dealers. They work for the police anyway during drug dealing, and they get recruited. They were told they were doing a jihadi training exercise, which is the standard operating procedure. And they were sent in, and a lot of them, they got knocked off. And then, a week later, one of the same people is throwing another bomb on a train, and he ends up in Spain, I believe. And he gets arrested in Spain. You've got to understand, it's not MI5, it's not MI6. It is that, and I'm using generic terms here. It's that Rothschild is so central. The House of Rothschild and Evelyn and David the Rothschild and others. It's a network through Europe and the UK. And it's that merging of, we talk about the merging of the corporation and the state. This is a merging of the old European royalty, UK royalty, and the Hofjuden, the court Jews of Europe, who became like the Rothschilds. And they had been intermarrying for 500 years. And these are the cultured people who want to go back to a very, they want oligarchy. This idea of giving peasants rights and peasants, we have a king, and it's nice if it's a benevolent king, not a nice benevolent King William and Queen Kate. Well, that would be nice. But the trouble is when you have that system, which has its merits, you get the not so nice king with the power of AI and autonomous systems, and now you're in big trouble.
Yeah. You're not the first guest I've had on to talk about the Rothschilds. And equally, I've had a number of guests who say, well, no, it's not the Rothschilds, because if you know the name, it can't be them.
Yeah, but we never knew their name. The internet saved us. Bilderberger, no one had heard of it. Davos, no one had heard of it. People were getting beaten up, and journalists were getting attacked for reporting on Bilderberger, for even saying the name of Rothschild. I've been at this over 30 years. I remember when I never heard of them, and it wasn't until just a very few journalists started saying the name. So it's like, oh, it's normal now. It's normal because the internet has freed us. And I could even explain to you why they're so out of time. And remember, they were trying to set this up, James, this system, back in the 1930s. That's how far behind they are. They are so far. They were meant to have the Federated States of Greater Israel by before the start of the Second World War.
Okay. There's lots of questions I want to ask you here. But I was just thinking about when I was working I used to work on the Daily Telegraph for about 10, 15 years. And I remember when Victor Rothschild died. And what because as a journalist, you're quite connected. You're familiar with figures in the establishment. You're familiar with you rub shoulders a bit with actors and with politicians. You get a bit of everything. And so, although I never met a Rothschild, I knew people who knew them or knew of them. So, for example, Miriam Rothschild, oh, wonderful lepidopterist, a fantastic zoologist, wonderful. And the Rothschilds are really into their gardening and stuff. I mean, the upper classes often are. So, because I'm
With King
plugged
Charles, of course.
well, of course, I'm plugged into the gardening world. So I know people, for example, who've been out to Jacob Rothschild's place in Corfu to design his gardens. So I'm sort of maybe one or two people removed from Rothschilds. And I do remember in those days how the Rothschilds were very much presented to us as these immensely civilized, fundamentally decent people with these lovely old houses and
I
this
bet.
inherited money, and they were cultured and etc etc. And I remember the obituary of Victor Rothschild, and it was talking about how he'd mastered the art of he was a very good jazz pianist. He played stride piano
I
and
didn't
stuff
know
like
that.
this. Yeah. And I've learned since.
Charismatic man, a very charismatic, friendly man.
Charismatic. And you then I've learned since, of course, when you go down the rabbit hole, you learn, for example, that he was MI6. He was also a double agent for the KGB, which last time I looked, they weren't our friends in so much as the word our means anything in these circumstances. So
You
I
should
get what
elaborate
you're
on
saying.
that Peter Wright spy catcher. Peter Wright was MI5 counterintelligence, and he said half the British establishment were working for the Soviets, including Victor Rothschild. And most people
And
will
of
go,
course,
"What? That's Lord Jacob's daddy."
and Peter Wright was mocked, of course, royally in the media as this. But was he Australian, or did he just go and live in
No,
Australia?
Peter Wright was MI5 counterintelligence. He retired to Tasmania. I
Right.
remember it happening, 1986. I remember it. And his lawyer is very fascinating. Is Malcolm Turnbull. Malcolm Turnbull became Prime Minister of Australia, sworn enemy of
Yes.
ultra-conservative Tony Abbott. The other Prime Minister who's in with the Windsors, very close with the Windsors. And I know all the gossip, by the way. King Gossip was my nickname at school. And Peter Wright basically wrote this book, and he said the bottom line was Thatcher was embarrassed that our intelligence services were so compromised for so long. And there's all these Brits. See, people think it's MI5, it's MI6. They are doing their job. They have been complaining about, Londongrad and the hundreds of billions of dollars, but they've all got their damn money in London banks and French banks and German banks, all these Russian oligarchs. So who the hell do they work for? Clearly
Okay.
not Russian nationalists.
So this is a dimension I've been missing, and I'm glad you're here to fill me in, because in my journey down the rabbit hole, I've come to fear and detest the three-letter agencies, and I have this assumption that CIA, FBI, MI6, KGB or NKVD or whatever, the FSB, whatever, what haven't I mentioned? MI6, MI5. They're all baddies. They're all working for the cabal that runs the world. But are you telling me that actually MI6 and MI5 in themselves are not bad? It's just a section within those organizations which is bad.
Look, I'll give you an example. Yes, that's essentially right. Look, they even made a movie, Ewan McGregor, Our Kind of Traitor. That is based on real events. One of the oligarchs was trying to give information to MI5, MI6. And MI6 that's John Le Carre. They were screaming at the London central bankers in the City of London, you are compromising our MPs, you are compromising vast institutions, Oxford, Cambridge, by letting all this money in. And they were told to shut their mouths. They were doing their job. Same with the FBI. I remember, and I cannot find the footage, I watched when one of the FBI agents came out and apologized to the American public with the joke not Warren Commission report, the 9/11 report. And he said, we apologize. We tried 5 times to have these people investigated. There were 5 separate investigations by 5 different groups of the FBI who were investigating Muslims learning to fly aircraft in Venice, Florida. So they were doing their jobs and they were shut down by one guy, Dave Frasca, Frasca, the head of the Muslim fundamentalist unit for the FBI. He shut down those investigations. So you've got MI5, MI6 trying to do their job and they're getting shut down by, and again, it's a generic cliche, but let's make it simple, the Rothschild City of London network. The money rules. And you're right, I hear stories all the time. He's an absolute gentleman, he's kind, he'll talk to anyone. When Lord Jacob was alive. These are gentlemen, these are cultured people. And unfortunately, with their money and 5 degrees of separation, they start wars and kill millions. And that's what we need to understand.
So, tell me a bit about them. I know the names. Well, obviously, I know Victor. There's Jacob who died. Well, both
Allegedly.
Jacob and
He's got his head in a vat somewhere in Puerto Rico, I hear. So.
I mean,
I'm suspicious. They don't just die. There's always reports. Lord Jacob has been placed in hospital under care. They just died. There was 5 very important people that died. Amit Yoran, cancer. You don't know. Zohar Zisapel, his brother. Yehud Zisapel. You don't know who they are, but I can explain it. Lord Jacob and Kissinger, my 5 pin-up boys. And they all died within 18 months. Now, Kissinger was old, but, they were suddenly just all dead. There was no indications that Rothschild was ill or suffering any major effects. He was quite healthy. And suddenly they were just all dead all of a sudden. And I just thought, anyway, let's not get lost down rabbit holes, but I'm just saying
I don't know. I quite like a rabbit hole.
So let's talk about Putin's body doubles.
Evelyn or Jacob?
Pardon, say again?
Who was more powerful, Evelyn or Jacob?
I really don't know, but I think all power is centered in London, and I think the British establishment want their empire back, and they're very upset about Roosevelt in the Second World War. And there's a union and a movement, Julius Evola type stuff, sacred tradition, that the European and UK elites have said, we want to get people back under the crown. We want them back under oligarchy. And I understand their argument. Unfortunately, we live in a very dangerous time where letting a very few people control things with automated kill machines is obviously out, and it's just time to end, in principle, the system that has been governing us for thousands of years, which is oligarchy. It's coming to an end. I'm not out to bash the royals. I understand. I think Prince William's a lovely fellow, along with Kate. If Charles was smart, he'd abdicate and then control from behind the scenes, Machiavelli style, and just slowly let the royals become more and more and more part of a tourist attraction. And we've got to get real forms of democracy where you have an educated citizenry. Where times are too dangerous. You've now got these automated systems coming in. They're getting rid of all sorts of analysts, human beings between that gap, because it's like a judge. We don't say it's a judge state. We call it a police state, because ultimately the judge can sign the form, but the police have to go on arrest and do all that stuff. Now, if you have a judge or even AI, and then you have automated machines that can do the job, I mean, we're in deep trouble. And you can't cross your fingers and hope for a benevolent king and hope it's going to be okay. That's why the American system is the system, and I'd like to see less convergence between the US and Russia and more convergence between the UK, Europe, and the United States, with an adoption of that limited republic system in some form.
Okay, before we develop that one, just on to your point about Prince William being nice. Tell me how you know he's nice.
Oh, I know he's nice because I read it on the internet. He seems like a very nice chap, a Cancerian. He inherited more of his mother's DNA than his ruthless father. Oh, so I've heard stories. I know people in the Royal Australian Navy, they served with Charles's pretend son, Prince Harry, who's a party guy. Coke and alcohol. They're all in Gibraltar partying all day. He's running around saying, you should be king. And they say they've met them and they said they're actually really, you got a really nice people. Even Harry, the scoundrel Harry was a very nice person.
So, okay. So according to your theory, because obviously I've heard various competing theories, that the Rothschilds, the sort of the Rothschild industrial complex, whatever you want to call it, are they the top dogs? I mean, do they have, are other families involved, like Sassoon, for example, the kind of Eastern Rothschilds, or
Yeah,
have they now merged in?
no, they're all under control. Look, all roads lead to London. British
Okay,
never leave. As the Indians say, the British never leave. And then they'll tell me, thank God the British don't leave. Look, I don't want to knock the British Empire. Um, Look at India. What an absolute horrible place. And I mean, I get Indians all the time tell me, thank God for the British Empire. Malays tell me, thank God for the British Empire. They like that system of governance. And, you know, India was, and to this day, is just filled to the brim with corruption. The joke was when the British left, no one was running to hand back their knighthoods. You know, dark skinned people had no hope of advancements within Indian society. Now they can go and get PhDs and they can get, you know, they can get scholarships and things. I mean, you know, I'm not here to knock the British Empire. I mean, even in Australia, where Native Australians were slaughtered, it wasn't by the British Crown. I'm not saying they were lovely, but Queen Victoria said the natives of Australia will be considered men and my subjects, therefore you can't murder them. If you murder them, you're going to hang. Now, this was an outrage in the colonies at the time because, you know, Indigenous will come and spear a sheep because they were fat and tasty, and the next minute 20 of his tribe are chopped to pieces and thrown on a fire. And Queen Victoria wanted to put a stop to that. Now, I'm just trying to balance the equation to say I'm not anti-British Empire. I'm just saying I don't feel like being ruled by someone who happened to pop out of a certain vagina in a certain historical time, in a certain historical setting, who is told he is born to rule. Even in the old days, the princes had to prove themselves in battle. They had to win the allegiance of their men. Nowadays, they're just a bunch of coke snorting spoilt slobs. And so I don't want them to have any say over my life.
right. You're quite old fashioned in your views in
I'm
many ways.
I'm a mix. People get confused. Am I conservative? Am I liberal? I'm everything. There's a time to be conservative and traditionalist, and there's a time to be radical. It's just knowing when. There's a time for the firm hand of dad, and there's a time for a hug from mum. It's the wisdom to know the difference. And I'm
Okay.
tired of right and left wing politics. It shouldn't exist. They've put us in this dialectic. It should be 2 plus 2 equals 4. Man and woman come together, hop into bed, make babies, which makes life, which and let's reach to the stars with all this new AI material science that's going to come. There's a whole bright future. If you're religious, Armageddon aside, Messiah coming, I leave all that to the side. I just want to live in the moment and I want to hope for the future and I want to reach for the stars. And before someone says that's impossible, we don't have the science and the technology, then if there's one thing I understand AI and large language models. And the future could be so bright. And at the same time, it's just this tipping point of where we're in such a dangerous time right now. It can't be undersold how dangerous this is, but it's also brilliant and it's also exciting and the potentials are amazing. And I'm tired of people just stressing everyone out with their clickbait garbage thumbnails. We need an adult conversation. We need an adult conversation about the future. And their aim is to keep us so anxious and so busy and so messed up and so worried about our futures, we can't all sit down together and say we need to understand the past because past is prologue, so we can understand the present and predict the future. And they want us, you know, I love Adam Curtis hypernormalization, where he says, oh dear, everyone is so stressed out. No one can make sense of what's going on. It's destabilized perception. They've had 150 years to hone their psychological warfare and it has to end. And I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Maybe we're doing our small, tiny, tiny part right now.
I think maybe they've had more than 150 years to practice
Well,
their
yeah, 500.
psychological war. Well, when you think that the word media allegedly comes from the land that gave us the Medes and the Persians, and that part of the world was people would rulers would go for training programs on the techniques which would best deceive their people and enable them to rule over the masses. But I mean that's by the by. I'm very presumably you've got a kind of grand overarching theory of things, and I'm always interested to hear how all the pieces fit together. So, for example, if it's the Rothschilds and the City of London, we're told that the English upper classes are lightly anti-Semitic. So, how did they allow themselves to be taken over by somebody they would presumably have considered the enemy once?
Well, you've seen the internet. Everyone's supposedly on the same team. After COVID, you'd think people would get together a bit. Everyone's fighting, arguing, calling people names, worried about their business model for their podcast or whatever, worried about upsetting too many people. They fight just like anyone else. I don't look up at these people like this. As a former RN, I stuck my fingers up a lot of people's bums to make sure they could go to the toilet. I've cleaned up a lot of human waste, urine, vomit, and I'm saying this very deliberately. Everyone's going to die one day. I don't look up to anybody. I don't believe in born to rule. I believe in a meritocracy. I believe that you create a system where the best of the best, could be the best toilet cleaner, could be the best nuclear physicist, gets a say. And logically, that's how a high technology society would work. But now you'll have to forgive me, but I have completely forgotten your question. My brain is not good.
Well, it doesn't matter. I was just really trying to get to the bottom of how this system works. So you've got, okay, so you've got...
Well, it's the same. Look, money and power. It's always worked that way. Alpha male, alpha female, alpha wolf, female wolf. That's Julius Evola's sacred tradition. It's top down. There is no democracy in heaven.
I get that. But, okay, so you've got this family which started
Groups of
coming into
families.
prominence.
Groups of families. They fight. They fight. King Charles hates them. King Charles is notorious for hating the Rothschilds. Notorious. Not because they're Jews.
Is he?
It's just because they're competing power. That's all. He believes in England and that the English should rule, and with their European allies. They're all. I mean, you're from the region. All the Europe and the UK has ever done is fight each other all day and all night. France is worried about Germany, so France teams up with England. The Swedes are up there, the quiet achievers, which few talk about, deep in with the royals, deep in with their families, high technology sector. These people are saying, look, we're born to rule, and they really believe it. It's not just a power thing. They believe the natural order is that we bring in people, so we might bring in a commoner to refresh the genetics, and they bring something valuable, and we watch them, we psychologically profile them, we put them through Cambridge and Oxford and Yale and Harvard, and we bring in this best of this best to manage. It's all, the key word is management. They want to manage everything. So we manage the planet. The planet has to be managed. And what they wanted to do before they reached out to the moon and Mars, and we are going there. It might take a while. They need a lot of new technology, but we are going there. They realize they want to lock down the population first, not just to kill for bloodthirsty reasons. It's just management. Because I remember watching when I was a teenager, they ran out of brown onions. They ran out of brown onions in India, and there were massive riots and hundreds died. And they're going to point to that and say, that's what happens when one little thing in the supply chain goes wrong. So let's manage the population. We'll imprison them, we'll make them sterile, and they can die peacefully in a little smart city. And that's what they believe to be the appropriate management decision of a farmer looking after and managing his flock.
So tell me about the connection between the... Are you of the view that the Chinese, the Russians, the Israelis, and the British and the Americans are all part of the same power nexus, that ultimately they're all in together?
They're all assets, as was Hitler. Hitler was an asset. Why else would Rudolf Hess fly over and bail out over a Scottish castle, for crying out loud? Hitler was absolutely...
What was he doing?
Well, because he was going, what's going on? Because Churchill had run in, and they all had an agreement that Germany would rule Eurasia, and the Brits would have their colonies, and the Aryans would rule the world. That was the basic agreement. But yeah, Goering was Hitler's channel into the British and European royals overall. Hitler was highly influenced. They lost control of their asset. He wasn't meant to invade. The Soviet Union. He was meant to form the United States of Europe. Stalin would handle North Asia, Mao would handle South Asia, David Ben Gurion would be in the Federated States of Greater Israel, that pivot point, and there it would be ruled by the what we would call now the EU and the UK, and they would rule together to anglicize and create to finish the British Empire, so to speak, which would be a ruling oligarchy using technology. Unfortunately, it all went pear-shaped for them, and that's when it all went downhill post late 1930s. And that's why Goering said to Hitler, Hitler's adjutant wrote a memoir, and I saw an interview with him. He was fascinating. He married an English woman. It was a fascinating story. In 1937, he went to Hitler and he said, look, he was worried about his security clearances, and he secretly married his true love, an English woman. And he went to Hitler and he said, mein Führer, I have violated all these policies. I've married an English woman. And Hitler said Hitler's eyes lit up and he went, oh, an English girl, Wunderberg, the world needs an England. Hitler was a notorious Anglophile. He worshipped England. Yeah.
I get that. And I get that one of his favorite movies was Lives of a Bengal Lancer and stuff. I get all that. But from my reading, I mean, yes, I think he probably was set up by the Anglo-American elites to take on that role. But I think the purpose of Hitler was always to have an excuse for the world war that they wanted, because world war is their business model, and they wanted to destroy Germany.
No, I
and they
disagree. And I wouldn't call it Anglo-American. America is Anglo. America's ruled by, Chatham House, Royal Institute of International Affairs, Council on Foreign Relations. So just leave the Americans out of it. They weren't running anything.
So just to be clear, in your understanding of the arrangement, the City of London is at loggerheads with the American establishment.
Now, huge fight going on. Look,
so
Kissinger and Chatham House brought in Trump as their destructor. There's Jared Kushner, for crying out loud. And they lost control of Trump. It was Pompeo and Mattis that got back control of Trump and said, and said to Bibi, you're not doing deals with China anymore. It's over.
Sorry, this is kind of all new to me. So who are Trump is what? He's representing the Americans at this point?
Trump is a stage actor, number one, a very bad actor from a World Wrestling Federation. He's a failed businessman 65 times over. Successful billionaire property developers don't side hustle World Wrestling Federation compare jobs. His handler was Ari Emanuel, his high-level Israeli intel.
Rahm Emanuel.
Ari's his brother. Ari's the super agent. The Hollywood super agent, the brother of Rahm Emanuel. There's Rahm Emanuel praising Kamala Harris. Ari's there praising Kamala Harris. And Ari's President Trump's agent to this day. To this day, he runs all that UFC. Endeavor Group run the cage fighting. They run the World Wrestling Federation. They were running Turning Point USA. They were in there doing all their stage work, all their fireworks, all their garbage. And no one will talk about it. Imagine that. But Kissinger was key.
Ari and Rahm Emanuel are, what's their background?
Big Chicago mob, Jewish mob, mob. Heavily in with the Israeli intelligence royalty, literal royalty. Now, they all hate Bibi, which is true. This is what I mean about fighting. Everyone thinks Israel is this blob of supremacist Jews drinking, unbaptized Aryan blue-eyed baby's blood in their Passover bread. They fight like cats and dogs. And Netanyahu is probably the most hated man anywhere in the world for multiple reasons. Nobody likes him. Avigdor Lieberman hates his guts, and he's an ultra-right-winger. The left hate Bibi's guts. And Rahm and Ari Emanuel hate him, and you've got this mishmash of these competing narcissistic interests all fighting. But at the end of the day, you see Kissinger in the White House at the same time in 2017. So Trump fires Comey, and Steve Bannon told him, you are a fool, do not fire Comey. This is going to backfire. But he fired him, and the next day he's sitting in the White House with the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, and Kissinger's in there as well. And you just think to yourself, hello? And that was the battle to get Trump out of the hands of Kissinger and Associates, which is Chatham House. I mean, I'm simplifying things. It's always more complicated than that.
Well, I quite like the simplified version because that's already confusing me. So Kissinger, in your book, he's a baddie in that he's working with the City of London. Is that right?
He's close personal friends with Lord Jacob. Close personal friends. Like very, but Kissinger was British intelligence before he ever got over to the US and was joined the US Army and was in American intelligence. He was British. He was recruited in Britain. He was there for 3 years with his family.
Was he?
He
Was
has
he? He's not English, is he?
no Kissinger's German. He was a German. He came out of
Oh, yeah, of
Germany.
course he is.
It's an interesting story. There's a front page. It was a Haaretz of the Times of Israel where they said Kissinger was running the world with a Jewish philosophy. And he said he was never, the two he was closest to was George W. Bush and Obama, how close he was to Obama. And you see 9/11, Bush moving into Obama, and it was meant to move into Donald Trump. And it was to pull the US out of Europe, out of the Middle East, and you would see that reshaping of the whole world. And you would see the Rothschild assets, Xi Jinping in China, Putin in Russia. I mean, look at Putin, the anti-globalist. He's been friends with Klaus Schwab, self-admitted, for 32 years when he first met him in Davos, 92. Who was Klaus Schwab's mentor? Henry Kissinger. Who was Henry Kissinger another mentor to? Oh, Vladimir Putin. Who was Kissinger extremely close to? Yevgeny Primakov, and you've heard of the Primakov doctrine, which is exactly what the multipolar world order is. Primakov was the head of the KGB. Primakov was, the head of the SVR or the SVU. He was also head of the Communist Party. He was going to run. And then he thought, I'm not that popular, we'll get this young Putin in. And this is the historical record, but everywhere you go, they'll say, Putin was unknown. He just appears out of nowhere. I mean, oh, come on. A perusing of the historical record shows Kissinger was right there arranging the whole damn thing. And that's why Putin's got all his bank accounts in Deutsche Bank, Paris banks, and London banks. And you say to people, can't you work this out? Seriously?
Okay. So also, Kissinger was an associate of David Rockefeller
Big time.
and
Nelson.
Zbigniew Brzezinski.
Yep.
So,
Sorry,
and
really
Brzezinski
important.
was
Zbig Brzezinski is really important. Techno-oligarchy, he's the king. Technology to rule.
okay. So, if there's a connection between the Rothschilds and Brzezinski and David Rockefeller, that means a significant part of the American establishment was controlled by, or yeah,
Totally. And to this
financed
day, they have thousands,
by the Rothschilds.
thousands of them. Like America's worried externally, they need to worry internally. There needs to be McCarthy hearings. There's got to be McCarthy hearings. Look at Hollywood. Oppenheimer. Nolan, usually a good director. That was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. I thought, well, it's going to be propaganda, but I'm going to switch my brain off. It's a Nolan film. It's got big actors in it. I'm going to enjoy this 3-hour monstrosity. It was the worst garbage I've ever seen in my life. Long-winded. And basically it says
Well, you haven't seen
Oppenheimer.
The Odyssey
Pardon?
yet, have you?
No, it's a
The
mix.
Odyssey may be worse.
I don't know.
Because
Everyone's,
he's got PTSD.
yeah, what's wrong with him? Like, usually I really enjoy
But
it on
he's
his
just
early
been,
stuff.
no, Brendan, he's been traumatized. Like he's seen Troy collapse. He's seen the Greeks betray the hospitality of the Trojans. The Trojans invited them in the horse, and then what did the Greeks do? They went and sacked the city, and that was a betrayal of something called Xenia. You're not up to speed on your
I'm not.
Greek ancient Greek traditions. But I take your point sort of about Oppenheimer in that I never watched it because I don't believe that nukes. Certainly, they didn't exist in 1945. That was all fake. So the Oppenheimer legend and all the stuff about I am become death, destroyer of worlds. That was just a sort of fancy Eastern quote that he started quoting in order to sort of
Well, he's a
reify
Soviet
the lie.
asset. Everywhere I go, there's a Soviet asset. They destroyed NASA. Why do you think NASA was so incompetent? There's the Soviets, as backward as they get with their German scientists. Yet they were just having success. And there's the dumb Americans. Can't seem to get anything to work through the 50s and 60s, finally. And you've got the Silver Master spying, you've got Oppenheimer. I mean, basically, that whole Christopher Nolan film was, yes, he was a Soviet asset. Yes, all the people around him were all hardcore communists. But you know what? Oppenheimer was a nice guy. That is literally the movie. So,
Right, and he was tormented with regret for his creation. Okay, but setting that aside, I'm struggling slightly with your overarching thesis because it seems to me that you're suggesting that there are some good guys in all this.
Well, it's all human beings. They have children too.
They do, yeah, they eat most of them.
Yeah.
They sacrifice most of them.
They push
Brendan,
that.
come on, just get real. We're talking about people who sacrifice their firstborn children in order to appease their dark gods, and you're telling me they're okay? They're
Have
just
you
like
ever
us.
seen them, or did you read that on the internet? I'm sure whack jobs are absolutely fill their ranks, off their heads on meth and all sorts of chemicals. We have a bunch of whack jobs everywhere at all times. Look at that guy, that 6'7" giant. I saw an FBI documentary. I had to sit with him in a car for like 3 days to get him across the country. I mean, he half ate his mother and then performed fellatio on her dead head. Now, he wasn't a member of the elite. Whack jobs are everywhere. Pedophilia is everywhere. You got more
Not,
chance.
I would say, not in the same ritualized way.
I don't believe Henry Kissinger or Rothschild have ever sacrificed a baby in their life. I don't believe they practice witchcraft, but
What?
a lot do. I believe they
Do you
just.
think, well, just on the Kissinger thing, do you think Kissinger was a pederast who was married to a bloke?
I believe he was potentially a pederast, but he was
Have you
definitely
looked
by.
have you looked at
He had
his
a
wife?
boyfriend when he was young, yeah, but he discovered the joys
Have you
of
seen
women
the
much
pictures of
later
him
on.
with his wife?
Yeah, what
You've
about
got a
him?
dwarf with a giant standing next to him in a wig, a man's face, but the
Well,
man is wearing a dress.
I'm not denying that. If I seem reticent, it's just I don't want to focus on sensationalism because 2 million Iraqis and Arabs in general from Libya to Syria to Iraq were slaughtered over 20 years. 3,000 people were instantly killed on 9/11. 10,000 died from inhaling the dust. 68,000 American soldiers were killed. 160,000 were permanently injured. And yet we're all getting excited over rumors, which they basically are. But I believe probably they've got so much money and they're on so many drugs and they're so whacked out. I get it. But do you see where we get focused on sensationalism and fangs and blood and
No, I
demons?
don't. I don't buy that argument because I think that if you're asking the question, who runs the world and why are they doing it? And what is it that separates from us in their thinking, in their cultural practices, in their spiritual worldview? If you're asking those questions, you are finally getting to the root of the answer, which is these people are not like us. They are not ordinary blokes who just happen to rise to the top of the pile. They're either selected in the case of Kissinger or their bloodlines like Rothschild and whatever. And they do not worship the gods that we do. I mean, I don't know which god you
They don't
worship, but
worship
I
any God.
imagine it's not
They
Baal
don't worship any
or
God.
Moloch.
They're Luciferian
Yeah.
rationalists. They worship their intellects. They believe in reason. If anything, they're more lodge and Masonic, intellectual approach to God, intellectual approach to the Godhead.
But
Look,
where did the Masons get their idea of? Where did they get their theology?
well, if you want to
You see
ask
where
a
I'm getting at?
Mason, they believe in UFO theology, that God is a master Mason, a high level scientific being that created human beings in a DNA lab. And there was a big fight in heaven, and they had their spaceship flight, and there were he had black creations and Asian creations and white creations. They had a big fight, and then they fell to earth, as mentioned in the Jewish Old Testament or Tanakh. And the Nephilim were big, tall, 7 foot tall people who mated with the beautiful women. That's what they believe. I'm not telling you I believe that. I'm just telling you they believe
Okay,
that.
but okay,
It's
so
UFO theology. It's science based, but they love the Satan worship, sacrificing babies. Yes, that stuff goes on without question. But to say that is the basis of their power, the power is science, technology, and above all, the ability to buy people off by having the means of transaction, which means the money supply. And once you understand the concept of the Hofjuden, the court Jews of Europe, because you got to remember back in the day, and you're a history buff, the moneylenders were the lowest rung of the elite. That was the lowest rung. The landowners were king. So you had all the old Viennese families, all these old elite families of Europe, the old Spanish family, the Habsburgs, all inbred, terribly inbred, all of them. And you have the moneylenders would come in and they would lend money to the king. They had their vast Jewish network, which was incredible. Never forget the Portuguese and the Spanish Jews. They were the seafarers. They ran the slave trade. They were
Whoa,
up there in
now you're
Amsterdam.
talking.
Yeah,
Now you're
we're
talking.
focused on the
Vikings.
Khazars. Forget them. The Portuguese and Spanish Jews, immensely powerful. They were the kings of. They had a lot of knowledge with celestial navigation. There's talk that what's his face, Columbus was Jewish. Whatever. The point
If he
is,
existed.
the point is,
Yeah.
I assume he did, but otherwise we question everything and we can't get anything done. But I hear your point. I'm open to questioning things, but you got to get to a point where you got to focus because we're
So,
at this critical time.
Brendan, I listen to what you've been saying, and I find you're fluent and articulate, and you obviously know a lot of stuff about stuff. Um, there are moments where I go, yeah, wow, that this accords with what my reading elsewhere. Some of it is kind of really quite jarringly off beam in connection with with the other things I've heard. So I'm interested in playing to your strengths, not your weaknesses. For example, it seems to me that you know an awful lot about characters from Israel. I mean, like you knew about the Emmanuels. I- How do you know what you know? I'm curious as to where you got to your knowledge of
I've
stuff.
been at this since 1995 when Yitzhak Rabin, I remember it well. I just watched on VCR, good old VCR, JFK by Oliver Stone. And which was, I might add, the co-producer was none other but than Arnold Milchan, another Israeli Intel asset refrigerator seller who became a Hollywood mogul. He's up there in Highgate. He got run. James Bamford and a bunch of the intelligence community ran Arnold Milchan out of the US. He lives in Highgate,
James
London.
Bamford,
Yeah,
what the
he's the one.
JCB, the
James Bamford wrote the Puzzle Factory, right?
diggers,
Pardon?
not JCB diggers.
No, James Bamford. He was one of the historians for the NSA and the intelligence community. He wrote The Puzzle Factory and a whole host of books on particularly the NSA.
Yeah,
And he was writing books in 2008 complaining, along with Bill Binney and others, about all this tech that was being handed to Israel and then being bought back by Hayden, Brennan, and Clapper for triple the price. That's where I tend to focus on Israeli espionage. We have to understand Israel is a military base. It's not a sovereign state. It is a Rothschild military base of
okay.
operations.
I think we should explore this one more because it's obviously an area of interest for you, and
But
I
it
haven't.
should be everyone's because you got to understand the US is $1 trillion military, and who controls it is what's going to keep us all alive or dead in the future. So you need to understand the mechanisms of control. If you don't, you're going to get sidetracked. Is the Earth flat? Do nuclear weapons
Sure.
exist? Are they all Satanists eating babies? And you miss. That's why I love Adam Curtis. We're not focusing on real issues. We're getting caught
Although
up in.
Brendan, Adam Curtis, I mean, I love Adam Curtis. I love his soundtracks. I love his collages of images. They're very well put together. He obviously spends hours in the picture library. They're a joy to watch, but it's BBC. I mean, it goes out on the
But I don't
BBC.
care where the info comes from. I just care, is this true? And he's right, destabilized perception. You're not getting it. I'll give you an example. We can talk all day and sell coffee mugs and T-shirts. And I think you should
Have you got
definitely
yourself?
consider getting one of our
Can't
coffee
read
mugs
that.
here.
Cyber is
Cyber is the real domain of power with BB and the octopus.
that's a bit of a dark, scary mug. That. Oh, can I ask you, by the way? I am disturbed, Brendan. I'm sorry, I'm disturbed. Why have you got purple in your background?
I just flicked it on as I went.
So you don't normally have purple because I'm a
This
bit
is the first time this is your software you put me on. I just clicked a button to have a background. We can have my green screen if you like.
well. I don't know. Get rid of that purple. Can you get rid of it?
Also, I notice it's flickering as well. Please don't get caught up on signs and signals and stuff. Look, I don't even know
Signs
how
and
to change it.
signals will be their undoing, Brendan. You're not
No, it's
gonna.
not because everyone's selling coffee mugs. Everyone's talking about it. We get
What's that?
Mary
What is
Silva.
that? What is that symbol on the back? By the way, that rectangle with
I
the
don't know. This
cone.
is the software you told me to get. I don't know what the hell it is because it was a
Chrome, no,
dark background.
I just said you need to use Chrome to use the Riverside platform. I can't believe that Riverside is putting that there, is it?
Yeah, this is the software you told me to get. I wanted a dark background to match my white shirt. I don't even know how to use it. I'm trying to
I know
find
you're
the
confusing me.
button.
Have you got a window behind you and then a wall with a rectangle with a thing that go like an S on its side?
No, I don't have it there. This is the software you told me to use. It's asked for a
What software?
background.
No, I just said we're gonna do a podcast on Riverside, which is the platform, and you'll
Yeah.
need Chrome. That's all I told you. I didn't tell you about
Yes,
getting.
but it's a background. I'll tell you what. I'll get rid of the background if I can find it. All right. I don't even know where it is on this screen. There's audio, video, share, react,
Hang on.
layout.
I
Is it
wonder.
layout?
That is really interesting that it's given you. That doesn't that tell you something weird about the world? That
No,
you've
I,
been.
I switch off because otherwise you're going to see details everywhere. You're going to see connections
But
everywhere.
people
And
do. Have you ever tried
yeah,
watching
but have you ever
some
worked in a
people?
mental health institution as a comprehensive registered nurse? This is what
Ah,
people
well,
are
they're
like in
full
a
of
mental health
demonically possessed
institution.
people.
That's what people are like in mental. They see connections everywhere and they know that. That's why they push it. The intrigue, sacrificing babies.
Let me ask you a
Mary
quick question.
Silva is a congressional candidate, got up in front of 300 Republicans. I helped her write her speech. An ordinary person, an audiologist in Seattle, Washington. And she got up in front of 300 top level Republicans and gave an 8-minute speech on how Israel completely took over US critical infrastructure. She didn't talk about sacrificing babies. She didn't talk about the color purple.
Well,
She
she
didn't
wouldn't have
talk
had
about,
time, Brandon. Come
huh?
on. I mean, that would have. Even I would have advised her not to mention sacrificing babies. It might have
Yeah, but did you
lost her,
see when you
lost her
push
the
that,
audience
it
that she
just
needed.
it marginalizes you. It's like David Icke. David Icke had a lot of good things to say, Sabbatine Francus, but with all the other stuff,
Yeah.
what person would
Don't let's talk about Ike.
what,
I
tell me, because I grew up on Ike laughing at him. He used to come on
Yeah, of
Liberty
course.
Forum.
Well, that's good. No, I mean, I think he's pushing a particular agenda, which I think
I
he's
think he believes it. I do. I think he
no, I don't
believes
think he
it.
does. I think if you look at his, look, I don't want to talk about David Icke. I think he's advancing the new age, and I think that's
Oh,
his
yeah, of course.
his
Yes.
purpose.
But I think he
Um,
believes it. But I
but
don't look. I don't even know how to get rid of the purple. There's no button here which says change background.
okay, so what is
Oh,
actually
wait a minute.
behind
What's
you?
that?
Is
No,
it is it is it a palm tree and a kind of
I have no idea. It was a dark background. It was second on the list. That's
no?
all.
But you're in Mexico. I want to know what is your view? Have you got palm trees or a beach or
No.
margaritas?
Oh,
Well,
margaritas. I never tried one till I was 50. They're damn delicious.
it is the best cocktail, I think.
Oh,
Um, I'm trying to. Okay, obviously, while I'm onto that subject, what is it like in Mexico? Are you happy there? Is it a good life?
I don't even know how I ended up here. Funny, but it. Well, if you believe in the Holy Spirit, I was very happy in Kuala Lumpur. I loved Kuala Lumpur as an expat, but I just
But
thought
you
I got to
can't
get.
you can't proselytize on behalf of Christianity, can you? In
Oh no,
Malaysia.
no. In fact, they had some Christians disappear, just disappear, who started proselytizing just when I got there.
So that's 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 a bit scary.
Well, don't proselytize in Malaysia. It's their
Right,
business.
you've
Yeah.
put me off. I'm not going on a preaching mission there anytime soon. Well, I quite like
Uh,
it as a.
well,
So yeah,
look, Islam's upset. Islam's pissed, basically. They treated me very well. I had the Royal Malay Police gave me a hug at the airport, said thank you for defending the Palestinians. I was treated very well there, but we got no financial help. Look, I was invited out with consular officials and oil and gas executives to the hotel Wet Deck, the W Hotel, right across from the British High Commission, I might add.
yeah.
And I didn't go. I don't feel comfortable with that. I wanted to go home. I want an apology. I want a compensation. And I would have sat down with the Jewish community and we could have shook hands and said, look, this is a terrible mistake. We need to sort it. I was so naive. I thought, we'll sort all this out. And I realized in the end that I wasn't getting any help in any of these Muslim countries. Ordinary Muslims were supporting me with $10, trying to help me out. But, multi-billionaire Muslims like the Mahathir Mohamad, the Oxford guy who loves Oxford so much, he never helped. I never got anything. I,
So, but I can't imagine Mexico is offering you any support either, is it?
No, but they were very good to me at the immigration when I got my 4-year temp visa. But Mexico's, look, I went, what the hell am I doing in Mexico? Mexico's like friggin' Mars to me. Bali's nothing for me. It's a 3-hour flight from Perth to Denpasar.
Yeah,
I know that's very exotic to the average Brit or the average American, but Mexico is actually really interesting. The huge influence of the French is here. It's very nice. Like, I always
What
think
do
of
you
it.
do? Do
Pardon?
you surf? Do you surf or
No,
what?
no, I haven't surfed for many years, not since my early 20s. That's long gone.
So what do you do?
I do nothing. I sit inside and go insane looking at four walls. I've had too many coincidences, too many chance meetings here. I've been contacted by, you would not believe who's contacted me, not just high level intel in Australia, people involved with ASIO, counter intelligence. I've had, invites out. I'm in Iran, in Tehran. Do you want to talk about Tehran? I'll tell you all about it. What a fraud they are. Absolute fraud. Oh, we're out to get the evil Yahud. Are you kidding me? They love Israel. They love Israel and they love Europe and they worship Germany. And I'm just sitting there going, well, this wasn't in the brochure, you know?
By they, what you mean, the ordinary people or the
Most of the ordinary people. They don't like America. They love Europe. They're absolutely in love with Europe.
But so what's your take on what's happening now because we're told in the news that there was this war, but I don't see much evidence that there's a war going on apart from the kind of...
No, look, I've got a lot of opinions on this. Mark Glenn had gotten a letter from then president, the real Iranian nationalist, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who they've tried to say was recruited by Israel. It's garbage. Absolute garbage. That guy has been out after Israel. He's questioned 9/11. He's held all the right conferences. He's gone after the clerics. And by going after the clerics, he went after the Ayatollah. I'll tell you the number one issue in Iran, corruption. That is the number one issue, the corruption of the clerics and the elites and the IRGs. They are so stinkingly corrupt and they're in love with Germany and Switzerland. They're backwards and forwards to Switzerland all the time. That's who's keeping Iran alive. You've got to understand who's keeping Iran alive. Germany is very, very popular in Iran. Look, I was there under the auspices of Zarif. I was staying with his family friends. The foreign minister, he now advises Pezeshkian, the current president of Iran. That's his advisor. Zarif is best friends with John Kerry, the ultimate globalist. Their kids are close personal friends, and Zarif's kids are US citizens. And his then President Rouhani did 6 years in Scotland, backwards and forwards, doing his PhD in Sharia law. Hello, he's best friends with guess who? Jack Straw and Lord Levi. That's 1 degree of separation between Lord Jacob Rothschild and his network, a bit like Candace Owens married into the Palmer family. 1 degree of separation between King Charles and the Rothschilds. And you say to people, these people are not Iranian.
You mean the Farmer family, George?
The Farmer family. They're good friends with King Charles and Lord Jacob at the Council of Christians and Jews. I'm sure he's a lovely gentleman. He's criticised Candace, my daughter-in-law, as an anti-Semite. Terrible form, just not critical.
Okay, so I don't know where we're going with this.
Well, Iran's a fraud. There's no war. Iranians just go where the money is. They are doing exactly what they're told. They got wiped out in a few hours. Hello, everyone. They just killed off 10 of the top people in minutes. Don't tell me for a single second the US, the Straits of Hormuz, that little section, right? Nothing farts, passes wind, or has a cup of tea on the ocean without US side scanning, millimeter wave radar, reconnaissance satellites, reconnaissance drones. Nothing moves. You don't just randomly float out and drop a sea mine over the side without the US seeing it. It's garbage. The point is, who gets all of their energy from that region? That would be Europe and China and India. And they're all being pressured by their access to resources. Now the US can sit there and they are switching the Straits of Hormuz on and off at will. This is about political, geostrategic chessboard pressure. That's what it's about. I know technology. I know people in the military, and they are laughing if you think Iran firing a few of their pop rockets off are controlling the Straits. Look at Israel. Why didn't they focus on Israel and their gigantic intel fabrication, their high technology sector? Where were the 100,000 missiles of Hezbollah has for 20 years said we will fire 100,000 missiles, accurate missiles? Well, where are they? Where are they?
Okay.
And Israel is sitting there laughing. And did you notice they did a analysis? Israeli Jews were pushing this on. Hey, why aren't you focusing on these really high value targets? Why are you dropping these missiles on like urban areas of the poor? Seems a little bit suspicious. And then they're going to say, well, there was some damage here and a little damage there. I don't buy it at all.
Okay. So I want to go back to to the big picture thing. So let me, if I'm getting this right, the Rothschilds, in the broadest sense, so not just
Broadest sense, yeah. The pin-up. It's just a
not just
pin-up.
Nat Rothschild.
Yeah, it's a pin-up thing.
Is he a player or is he not?
I think he's just a young idiot, like a Prince Harry. But he's a player. He runs errands. He runs messages. I mean, he's close with Oleg Deripaska. And I might add, Paul Manafort and Roger Stone. Why don't we throw them into the mix? And they're all in with Chabad Lubavitch.
But you're saying that the sort of aristocratic Jews don't like the Chabad.
Oh, no. They consider them brown shirts. Ruth, they're just cannon fodder. They'll get rid of them when their time comes. These are cultured Europeans. These are European Jews, very cultured people. And you've got to understand, they're all mixed in.
I'm interested to know what it is about you and your background and your reading that means that we can trust your version of events.
It's not about trust. We're not 16-year-old schoolgirls in a nightclub trying to find a nice boyfriend.
That's something you're describing something different there. I'm just talking about. Look,
well, I'm talking about a naive children. You've got to go out and do your own research. I mean, everything I got out of like Carol Quigley, Tragedy and Hope. I've got out of Bill Cooper, Ezra Pound, Eustace Mullins, Reverend Ted Pike, Myron Fagan, the old Red Orchestra stuff from the past, all the old, even Fulbright, Senator Fulbright criticizing AIPAC in the late 60s. Everyone thinks this is new. None of this is new. All right. I mean, Ezra Pound.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have read quite a bit of that material, but we haven't necessarily reached exactly the same conclusions as you. So I'm interested in just pinning you down slightly on your take.
All right, let me give you an example. Simple question. Yeah. Simple question. We all know that Hamas was funded by Israel, right? That's been known for a long time. Then the argument was, well, they kind of lost control. It's
created by Shin Bet, yeah?
Yeah. But now they're admitting that there's Bibi saying, no, we got to keep giving them money. It's come out the Israeli press because Israel is totally fighting each other now. There's pro-US factions, there's pro-Russia-China factions, anyway, point is, and also we ask these questions. Hamas is sitting in 5-star hotels in Qatar down the road from the largest UK-US military base in the world outside the US. Okay, that doesn't seem to make sense until you understand Rothschild, MI6, MI5, that network. And they're right in there in Dubai. I mean, Dubai, all those places are just pure Rothschild, pure London banking set, the whole thing. Because they want to keep that oil money in British banks so the British banking system doesn't collapse. But we can ask these simple questions. Hezbollah, fanatics, remember? Beards flowing in the wind, kill the Jews. Wah! Leave now or leave in a box, as Nasrallah said. Wah! Okay, 100,000 missiles. They're slaughtering all the Gazans. So where are the 100,000 missiles? Are you even for real, Nasrallah? Are you an English stage actor playing a role? Why don't we ask these questions? How do you transfer billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars around and the NSA doesn't notice, GCHQ doesn't notice? Oh, they made an LLC, we're confused. My butt, they know exactly where those dollars are going. Where are the money men? The money men rule. Money men. Nasrallah's a nobody. He's an actor. Who's bringing the money in to buy the weapons? You don't just buy 600 tons of high explosive and RPGs and AK-47s and ammunition. It's a huge endeavor. It leaves a paper trail a mile long. These are simple questions we need to ask. Why was Zarif hanging with John Kerry? Why was President Rouhani hanging out with Jack Straw and Lord Levi? And no one clicks. Aren't these Muslim fundamentalists? Work it out.
Yeah, but Brendan, that's what you've just done is a gish gallop. You've whizzed me through this information, and you say it very fluently. And probably like quite a few people listening to it, I'm going, well,
It's not my fault you haven't heard all this. I've been talking about this for 15, 16, 17 years.
I've heard you talk. I've heard you talk before at your sort of machine gun rate, and
You know why I'm in a machine gun rate? Because I'm freaking traumatized. I sit and stare at four walls all day. I ain't partying with Mexican hookers in nightclubs with cheap $50 cocaine here. My life has been torn apart, James. That's why I'm like I am. That's why I'm like I am. No one would support me. People wouldn't come. Oh, I had JSOC. I had the top lawyer for General Milley's sister in my bed. That's the level of people who have been contacting me. That colonel, is now the head of the comptroller doing the audit for the Pentagon. Now you think I must be connected. I'm an ordinary person living the most extraordinary, to the point where I'm just, if Elvis appears on a spaceship, I'll just be unmoved. The reason I'm like I am traumatized, and I don't mind saying this. I am exhausted. I don't know who to trust. I don't go out. I don't speak to anyone. I go to the same cafe. I have my coffee, maybe a little cheesecake on the side, and then I go home. And that's it. And I hope that my bank accounts keep working. So if I seem uptight, this is why. I've been at this 17 years. They destroyed my career. They put me in the news as a freaking Nazi. They utterly destroyed me. They broke into my home every day for months. They broke into my friend's house and traumatized him to the point he had to take off for a year to protect himself. They were destroying credit cards of my friends. It was horrendous. And people are going, why haven't I heard about this? Well, yeah, why haven't you heard about this? That's why I'm like I am. Don't take it personally. I am stressed and I am tired and I am exhausted. I am physically exhausted. My health is crap. My testosterone goes to zero. I have to have injections. I'm doing every health thing under the sun trying to get my health back. And I look normal. Trust me, I am not normal. I am exhausted.
Yeah, and I'm sorry that. I think I would be traumatized if I'd been through what you're through. I'm just trying to separate the sort of the wheat from the chaff, because I want to get the best out of you, and I want to. I keep coming back to the structure, because I think structures matter.
But why don't you go back to Zarif and ask? Well, Zarif's with John Kerry, but I thought these were like North Korea, Kim Jong-un. Zarif was the foreign minister. Javad Zarif was the foreign minister, and he's now advising, to this day, right now, Pezeshkian, the president. These are the progressives. He's a heart surgeon. The president is currently a heart surgeon trained.
President of what country we're in now?
Iran. Pezeshkian.
Right.
So Zarif is the foreign minister. That's who was signing off on my. I was staying with his friends in his hometown of Hansa. I didn't organize this. I just went there thinking they were all the same. Then you realize, no, this is not Mahmoud Ahmadinejad.
Who invited you?
Mark Glenn knew from his work with Iran Press TV. I was friends with Mark of the Ugly Truth podcast. He interviewed Dr. Alan Sabrowski from the U.S. Army War College, and he knew Ahmadinejad wrote him a letter. When I was on my hunger strike in jail, I said, Mark, could you try and contact Iran Press TV and the president of Iran? This was 2012. And he got back to me and said, yes, Iran Press TV got back and said, President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad said that you would be welcome in Iran with, quote, open arms. That's what kept me fighting. Then he was gone when I got out of jail, and suddenly no one's interested in attacking Israel at all. Now you go there and it's not what you think. Now it's like this liberal, drugs are everywhere. Drugs are all over the streets, alcohol. Don't believe a word about Iran, that it's this pious Muslim country. It's garbage. It's just one big party place and everyone wants rid of the clerics. They hate them. 70% of the population hate them. They want the Shah back.
Yeah, I'd quite like to go to Iran.
It's fascinating. As a history buff as you are, you would love it. The food's amazing. The architecture. People are very friendly.
Yeah, that's what I've heard all this. Okay, so Israel is a Rothschild construct.
Totally, and so is Iran. So is Iran. Iran is as well.
Okay.
That's the dialectic. Okay. Why? Because of the hadiths, 70,000 Jews from Isfahan. They say the coming of the Mahdi army will be preceded by 70,000 Jews from Isfahan. That's the home of the merchant class in Iran. And that's why Iran was led into the region. Why? To force the Arabs to do a peace deal with Israel. That's the great game. Look, the Ayatollah came out of a French village outside Paris, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Yes. So when
I'm sorry if I
if
appear, I'm sorry if I enter your viewers. Look, I'm just tired. That's all. And it's like I'm explaining things which are just so obvious to me. And you're not the
yeah,
first one to sit there and go, I,
sure, sure. So if Israel is essentially a Rothschild puppet, and if Israeli intelligence is everywhere, that means, in your thesis, the world is run by the Rothschilds.
yeah,
It
well,
controls
yeah, it
China,
was
Russia.
when we couldn't see them because Dracula operates in the dark. There's no dark anymore. And Israel, look, Mossad was warning the Americans about 9/11, and while they were also heavily involved in it, but so was French intelligence, so was UK intelligence, and so was German intelligence. You got to
Why
understand,
would
it's
why
the
would why would
snake
Mossad do that?
because it's not all the same. They're a government agency. Mossad is penetrated by the same networks. Look, I'll give you an example. For the last 15 years, article after article coming out of Jewish journals and the Jewish press was it's time for Russia and China to become the protectors of Israel. Now, your viewers are going to go, really? And I'll say, well, here's 300 links that you missed because you didn't have Google alerts. And I'll show you 300 articles staying blatantly out in front that we will be teaming up with Russia and China. And the US was to withdraw out of the region. This is the old Rothschild, Kissinger, City of London, multipolar world order primitive doctrine. That was the plan. And Trump was meant to lead that. The outsider, a disposable condom. Once he'd done the dirty work, out he'd go. That didn't work out for them. That was Madison Pompeo and the old waspy skull and bones crew, the old Anglo establishment. We've got to get out of our heads that it's just this one blob. Israel fight like cats and dogs. There's pro-America, there's pro-UK, pro-Europe, there's all different kinds. And Israel is also penetrated by the United States as well as the other way around. But we have to put together Epstein, sexual blackmail rings, which allowed what? Bill Gates, one of the prime offenders, he assisted in shifting all of Microsoft core coding to Israel. You don't know about that. What is Microsoft doing being core coded in Israel? Why don't you ask Bill Gates? But have you ever wondered? It's full of Russian emigres, GRU, friends. Why? Because Yuri Andropov in the 1970s said we're going to penetrate Israel. At the same time, his buddy Kissinger started the Binational Science Foundation. That was to make sure the transfer of technology to the Israeli state. This is how they prop up their proxies, their assets. This is history. I put it in all my videos. I've said it 1,000 times. Again, nobody sees them, so the information appears so new. They suppress my channel so much. Once you understand the 70s was a key period, détente with the Soviet Union, détente with China, they were building up China, their proxies. The US was to shrink back and handle North and South America. That is now over. Now, that doesn't make the people running the show now wonderful. It doesn't make them kind humanitarians. It just means you have an organized crime battle going on about who shall rule.
Yeah, I mean, to a point about the 70s, I do remember Rurik Skywalker, who's very interesting on this, telling me that Andropov was the key name in all this. He was I can't remember what his real name was. It was a very Jewish name, but he was not basically a Russian. He was
Well, I mean,
outsider.
if they don't like you, they call you a Jew. They call Prigozhin a Jew, but Prigozhin, he was a thug, but he was a Russian nationalist, unlike Putin.
Well, I think we're more than talking about nice distinctions here. I think. I mean, hang on. What was Andropov? I probably won't tell you, will it? Real name. And Yuri Andropov, real name.
I know they called him Jewish a lot, yeah. But I mean, it's a stupid concept. For every Jew that goes to a camp, I promise you 25 Goy will be joining them. That's what we need to remember. Yes, Jewish power is real. Jewish power is real. Political Zionism, it's all real. But this lust for power and control will not end. Every cliche Jew, whatever a Jew is, could disappear in a puff of smoke tomorrow. This rolling of technology, this oligarchy of technology, this technology will roll on. And the only defense is the United States, its traditions, its limited republic, its foundation of individual sovereignty, and of course its trillion-dollar military. That is the only power that can stop this. And in large measure, there's a lot of very positive things happening out of the Trump administration. Donald Trump runs nothing. He plays golf. This is Heritage Foundation, a bunch of serving and retired generals, Pentagon, and some billionaires.
What you're putting your faith in these people?
It's not about putting my faith. It's about we're all still alive. Do you seriously think everyone is just run by these Satan worshippers? They have children. Yeah, see, I disagree. I think they push that. They push it because it puts people off. It makes it Hollywood. You can't fight a demon. How are you going to fight a Satan worshipper?
Well, you can, but I mean that's another story. We won't go there because you're not on the same page as me.
Because we're moving politically, James. We're moving politically, and we're having an effect. I'm getting contacted by people like you wouldn't believe. You know why? They have children too.
Yeah, and the Russians do.
And they believe that they take a look at America with all these Soros Foundation, which is all run by Rothschild. It's all the same, right, left. They were funding these crazy lunatics who should be just lying unconscious after a heroin overdose. They propped them up, put perfume on a pig, given them a #1 bestseller somewhere, and suddenly, do I have 2 PPs or 3? And people are questioning this. They deliberately do this. Now the Russian public go, oh my God, the Americans are crazy. Thank God for Putin. Thank God for Putin. And he's still hugely popular. He's still in the high 60s of effect. But this is the great game. None of this is new. This is the psychological warfare. You create enemies. What are we worried about? Now, the Somali scammers and the millions should be deported. Correct. But what about all those bankers and the drug money launderers of Wall Street in the City of London who have absolutely enriched themselves? And we're not talking about them.
You're certainly not going to get any disagreement on that one. It's quite interesting. I think you're the first... I've seen this theory on the internet, but I think podcast to articulate it. So, in your worldview, if I'm correct, that Trump is sort of representative of a faction in the US which is playing sort of 5D chess or whatever to counterbalance the Rothschild hegemony. Is that right?
Well, it's not 5D chess. They've said it, but people don't see it. Trump came out in January 2025 and said the EU was created to screw the United States. It's in all my videos. Pete Hegseth comes out and says, we do not have Paul Bremer on staff. That's a 2IC of Kissinger and Associates who set Iraq on fire. He says, Paul Bremer is not here and we will not be doing another Iraq when he talked about Iran. Vance goes after the EU night and day. Now, a lot of people don't see this stuff. When Trump was first in and he pulled out the head of Lockheed, again, I know all this stuff, but no one else seems to. He pulled out the head of Lockheed, Marilyn Hewson, and he said, Marilyn, are you going to lose any more technology? No, Mr. President. That F-35 works, doesn't it? Oh, yes, Mr. President. And she said, yes, we don't want to lose any more technology anymore. Thank you. Now, she was gone, but she retired by the end of Trump's term. But that was a first. The military-industrial complex tied in deeply with the Israeli state and City of London, when you look at where all the patents end up, was pulled up for the first time in their lives. Trump goes on Fox News and says, oh, the Iranians call me all the time. When we killed Soleimani, they rang me and asked for permission to fire a missile at our bases. This is on Fox News. I put it up. It's online. It's on YouTube. And Trump says, yeah, they asked permission and said the missiles will miss. The missiles will miss your base. Please don't attack us. Out of Trump's mouth. That's the level of control.
Just because Trump said it doesn't mean it's true.
No, it is true because I've seen it. Look, I love simple thoughts. 9/11. You could go after the US on 9/11. What bonds all these people who are all fighting, Marjorie Taylor Greene to Tucker Carlson to a Rothschild to Putin to Xi? Remember, their lives are on the line now. This huge fight's going on, but none of them will tell us who did 9/11. None of them. Not a single soul. I was in Iran talking with government analyst, Mr. Parsipur of the Persian Gulf Study Center. And yeah, we all know Israel did 9/11. We all know, okay. Have you ever heard Iran ever, besides Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who made a mention of talking about a conference on it? That's why I went there thinking this would happen, not realizing that he's gone and that faction's out of power. And but Iran is under attack. Tell us who did 9/11. Attack. No one ever attacks the US elites, the Epstein class on 9/11. Have you ever noticed that? It's very strange.
What do you mean? Tell me.
Well, if America's your sworn enemy, aren't you going to attack them on 9/11 and say Dick Cheney, Project for the New American Century, Israel was involved, Israel, your sworn enemy? You go to the Muslim world who are all swearing to destroy America, but none of them can tell me who did 9/11. I can go to an Afghani market and find an English language book by Chris Boleyn on who did 9/11. But no one in the US cross-promotion whore tour of the podcast world will tell me who did 9/11. None of them. None of them will even tell me who Chris Boleyn is. And yet he exposed the whole thing in 2007 with a fully referenced book. Fully referenced names, dates, places, companies, every detail you could imagine. But no one will tell me.
Doesn't the world and his wife know who did 9/11? Is that not a known thing? I mean, it's not something I've tended to cover because I think it's just like obvious.
But it's not obvious because Israel was running all the radar systems, all the Amit Iran, you've never heard of him. That's one guy, ship dipped in West Point, Israeli firster. First man to die on 9/11 was the head of Akamai who created it, Daniel Lewin, who some say was actually an American asset, and they murdered him on 9/11. The first to die on 9/11 on the aircraft. The head of the most powerful company that distributes the internet load, Akamai. You've never heard of these things. That's why no one talks about it. And they need to talk about it because 9/11 was cliche, we keep it simple, an Israeli job, and all the computer systems that enabled that thing to go ahead at the time, and Amit Iran is running around handling the Pentagon, he's handling the FBI, they're all Israeli companies. The FBI database, Variant. All the Class A infrastructure, surveillance systems, Variant, Israeli companies. The DEA.
And they're doing it why?
Because they control the United States. It's not just Epstein and blackmail rings. You've just seen that the water's been contaminated by industrial controller chips. Guess where all those industrial controller chips were put in by? Israel. Guess who the companies are? Israel. One company. Rad Group. You've never heard of it because no one will talk to me. Isn't that funny?
So 9/11 in the carried out by the Israelis. Why? I mean, was it to help lucky Larry Silverstein get his insurance?
No, that's City of London. The point was to get Americans to go to war against Islam, the Oded Yinon plan, translated by Professor Israel Shahak, an Israeli, I might add, who was never murdered. He translated that document and said, we need to break up pan-Arab nationalism, starting with Saddam, and we'll smash it to pieces, and then we'll form the Federated States of Greater Israel, the great program they were meant to have done by the late 1930s, early 1940s. Never happened. Oded Yinon. To do that, they had to get American power in with the Brits and others to come and smash up this region. It hasn't quite worked out for them. And Steve Bannon came straight out and said, you are not having Greater Israel. It's not happening. Get out, Jared Kushner, all the rest of the stuff going on right now.
So what? I'm at the moment. I'm seeing Jared. Wasn't Jared Kushner one of Trump's chief envoys in the Iran affair?
Well, he's still there, and that's why I say Trump has to go because you need to get rid of all these people. All Chabad should have no. Chabad are right in with Nathaniel Rothschild. They're at Oxford with him, the Oxford Union, all the time, hanging out. You get him out. Howard Lutnick out. I mean, I'd rather have Stephen Miller advising the president. Just get Lutnick out, all of Chabad out.
So if Trump was leading the American faction to try and fight the Rothschild Anglo hegemony, City of London hegemony, who's fighting your corner now? I mean, if that is your team.
Well, that is. Well, Bannon's my team. Bannon's got his own problems, minus, his coke habit and Irish whiskey on boats with Miles Gow and other things he gets up to. But Bannon has gone out after Rothschild, City of London, the Special Executive Service, you name it, Kissinger. Bannon absolutely destroyed him. I've got every single quote he's ever done, every single interview he's ever done on this stuff. No one is more up on it than Bannon, but he has his own infuriating bad habits. I'm looking for a beige hat, not a white hat, but they're hard to find. The point is, Bannon was at war with Kushner and Gary Cohn out of Goldman Sachs. And Bannon was in the Oval Office and told, what's her name, Ivanka, to shut her mouth and to go F herself. Literally, that's in Vicky Ward's book, Kushner, Inc. And Bannon said, well, that's the end of me. And he said, Trump turned to Ivanka and said,
blunt.
Yes. And he said to Ivanka, this is from Steve Bannon, quote, sweetheart, why don't you and Jared go back to New York? That's a quote. And Bannon's sitting there, whoa. So what do they have on the president? Because they're still there. And Bannon said it was Gary Cohn and the Kushner and Kissinger that got him booted out of the White House. That's the war that's going on right now. Bannon has got up on stage at Turning Point USA. He's at war with Mark Levin. He's at war with that creepy, rat-like, horrible Ben Shapiro. And he said, you're not getting Greater Israel. We are at war. Shapiro. Oh, no. So you're joking.
Lovely. What do you not like about Ben Shapiro? He's
apart from the fact that he talks like this, apart from this.
And it's creepy.
Funny guy.
Oh, I'm sure he is. And he's also working for a hostile foreign state, and he needs to be executed for treason. If he wants to be American, then be American. Number one.
So I think it's great that you think there's hope. And
I do, 100%. But it's going to be up to individuals moving offline. Instead of selling coffee mugs, do what we have done in the incredible work of Congressional Candidate Mary Silva, who gets no cross-promotion, no interviews, nothing. Yet she's done incredible work. Lee Levino ambushed Bannon, Corey Mills, and Charlie Kirk on video and said, Israel has taken over all our critical infrastructure. On video, can't get a single cross-promotion. That tells you how controlled the internet is.
I don't believe anything I see on the internet. I don't believe Charlie Kirk is dead, for starters.
That's not unreasonable, but it's not the most likely explanation. I believe he's dead, but it's not unreasonable. They can stage stuff. They're very good at it. But he wouldn't. He's too...
The staging was obvious, Brendan.
No, I disagree. I've used a lot of firearms, and I promise you nothing there was of... I actually believe it was someone with a little 32 handgun standing directly in front. We all know no 30-06 is doing a little hole in your neck. It's just not happening. But please, I'm not stupid.
So we don't have any more violent disagreement over whether Charlie Kirk's dead or alive. Tell me briefly about the worse than Epstein blackmail, compromat, sex things. I don't know about this. Tell me.
Killing children. Where are all the 10-year-old Ukrainian girls they brought over? No one talks about them. Gefrey's a piece of garbage.
But who are the people who do this, and where? Who's involved, and where?
Oh, Israeli Russians are kings of this, but they have lots of people helping. Look, I'm in Mexico. Who do you think do all the Satan worship here? Who do you think's all over here? They were kicked out by Queen Isabella. They've come right through this region. Who runs the Colombian drug trade? Do you know how many of them? Roger Reeves, the top transporter for Jorge Ochoa and Pablo Escobar. I was in jail with him. All right. The guy he was in jail with was born in Israel. He's a Colombian Catholic. He's born in Israel.
You were in Western Australia?
In Western Australia. He's one of the biggest drug transporters in the world. Smuggler. Look him up. There? Because he was importing a ton of cocaine into Western Australia. And I got his book published. He was Barry Seal's boss.
You must have got some great stories from
don't start me. Prison culture, like just the levels of corruption of the police and the drug trafficking by police, like people, please. I know some good coppers. They're good people. They try to change things. The police deal the drugs. All right.
Okay, but I want to focus on what this high level drugs guy tells us. So you're saying the cartels in Mexico are answerable to whom?
They're all Israeli Russian.
They're all Israeli Russian.
All Israeli Russian. They're right through Mexico. It's in the Mexican alternative media. They all talk about Jews, and they don't hold back either here. They'll just say Jew. Schonbaum's hated by a lot of people.
Why are the Jews so disproportionately represented in these fields?
Because that's a long history. But just remember this. I'm not here to defend Jews for the sake of defending Jews. But what I do believe, which I love about America, which started in the UK, I might add, the proud history of the United Kingdom. And I don't want to bag the UK for the sake of it. It's a sacred place, in my opinion, not least for your brilliant period piece dramas, your huge irony comedy, which we all love. The Death of Stalin continues to make me chuckle after I've watched it the 400th time. You've got a history of Jews were forced out of the mainstream, and the only way they could make money was money lending, bootlegging, the drug trade, and every dirty thing under the sun. They were put into all the dirty jobs. I don't want to take away personal collective responsibility, but the Goy also have to take responsibility for marginalizing and pushing in that direction. And when we understand that and we all take responsibility and stop blaming the Jews for making us all watch porn, we have to understand we must judge people as individuals. We can make generalized statements, that's normal. Sometimes we've got to get a point across. But when you look, you find again and again, it's the same. Michael Harari was running drugs throughout the region, another Israeli asset, which we never, the name doesn't come up. He's long gone now. But when you look, every single advisor, All the special forces, they are Israeli, Russian, every single time.
Right. And did
Queen Isabella,
I-
basically. Queen Isabella injected them from Spain and Portugal, and voila, they were all turned up. Pirates of the Caribbean, well, they were all Jews. They're very proud of
They
that.
were they sort of conversos? Were they pretending?
Yeah,
to be
conversos.
Catholics?
Yeah. And a lot of them were pretending. A lot of them were legitimate, sincere converts too. But yeah, conversos. Full of them
And so
here.
they would have been Sephardic Jews.
Yeah, Sephardic,
So
Portuguese, Spanish.
actually, they were probably Phoenicians, weren't they?
You could argue that, but I will tell you that the oldest synagogue in America is not Casa, it's Portuguese.
Well, the Phoenicians got to Portugal as well.
Yeah, but I mean, what's a Phoenician? What's a Jew? It's just human beings.
Wow.
I mean,
No, it's not. Most human beings don't come from a culture where they sacrifice children to what was he called? What was the Phoenician god called?
Moloch.
No, he had a different
Baal.
name, the Phoenician one. No, I mean those were sort of regional variants. But it's I'm going to do a podcast on this, so I don't want to spoil it. But there's a reason why the people who run the world are into child sacrifice, buggery,
It's also compromat.
the third eye, which is a giant anus, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, we need to talk about the gay mafia, the homosexual mafia too. They're immensely powerful. We never talk about that. They are so powerful, gay mafia. Drug trade, they're really heavy in the drug trade. The police love them because they get the really good drugs. When they bust a violent gang, they give it to the gay mafia to sell on their behalf. They're immensely powerful. Some of the biggest rats for the police as well.
Well, yeah. How do you join the gay mafia? You just got to be gay.
Yeah, you got to go to all the gay clubs like Andrew Tate and Tristan. They were both male escorts. That's how they met Lord Farmer, George. That's where they met him, at the male escort services.
I don't know anything about this. And
Oh,
obviously-
you won't. I know exactly what they are. It's not hard to work out
Say
what
it
the Tate
allegedly,
brothers
won't
are.
we? Isn't it? Are they going to sue me?
Well, what do you do with when George Farmer's getting interviewed saying, I knew Andrew Tate for many, many years before he was Andrew Tate? What is the son of high-level British establishment, 1 degree of separation from King Charles and Lord Jacob Rothschild, doing hanging around with a street thug?
I don't know. But
Well,
I
why
do
don't you
know,
ask George? Because Tristan and Andrew were male escorts. They were twinks.
right. And there was I.
They met in the gay
Andrew
clubs.
Tate was a ladies' man.
Oh, no. He talks about trannies all the time. You know, he drops hints all the time because, look, he's a low-level drug dealer. He runs errands. He's probably an MI5, MI6 informant. Whenever you see them wearing gold
Well, his dad was
chains.
CIA, wasn't it?
Yeah, so they say, but possibly, certainly in a lodge without question. That's why they were always doing this little hand sign and the Count of Monte Cristo. Remember, they made a fake
Are they
jail
doing
cell?
it?
Oh, all the time. They were always doing this. He's got his
Brendan,
lawyer,
what
Joe
did you just say
McBride.
to me? What did you just say to me about 45 minutes ago?
Yeah, no, I said don't get infatuated with it. Like
Yeah,
everyone's
oh,
looking
I
for,
s-
Brendan scratches his nose. It's a sign. It's a sign. When I say
Do you know
zero,
what?
I used to
You're
do zero
sounding-
like that, but I had to
You
stop.
are sounding like my wife because whenever I become interested in something, she says, "You're obsessed," and I'm saying, "No, I'm interested." And now
I just
you're
feel
doing what
time.
my
I
wife
get
does.
it. I totally get
When
it.
you do it, you're interested, but I'm doing it. I'm
Yeah, but
obsessed.
I want to stop us being run into this AI techno oligarchy, and we need to move fast so we can self-indulge. We can indulge ourselves. Look, my interest. It's not AI, high technology, and international espionage. My interest is healthcare. That's why I became an RN. My interest is in alternative healthcare, treatment rather than cure. L-Reuteri yogurt, which I'm really getting into, which is helping quite a lot. I'm interested in leaky gut. That's my interest, not international
No,
intrigue.
well, these are all worthwhile pursuits, given how much we're poisoned by the pharmaceutical industry and the kind of the commercial agriculture and by the food industry. And yeah, I totally get all that. I just think that we shouldn't pull our punches when we are talking about the the predilections of the people at the highest level in the New World Order. They're not normal.
I don't believe a single second that Lord Jacob Rothschild or any of his friends have ever sacrificed a child, ever.
Well, that's thinks you, and I say.
How do you know? Because you read it on the internet.
I've spoken to people who think otherwise, and it doesn't mean to say that I know. It just means that when you say it isn't true, I'm going, well.
But I'm not saying that. I just don't believe it because it's like masturbation. I mean, I'm Catholic. I've heard about it, but never tried it. This is a joke. But it's self-indulgent. It's pleasurable, but no babies are made. I'm into making babies.
I don't think it's self-indulgent. Look, when what's his face was talking about this, that guy who got done for tax fraud. What's he called?
Tax fraud is more dangerous to these people than
about 20
baby
years
sacrifice.
ago. There were 150,000 children disappearing in America. The figure's probably doubled since. I mean, hundreds of thousands of kids disappear in America. That ain't chump change. That is a lot of kids dying.
So this has you deeply concerned? I'm going to set you up here. Has you deeply concerned? Like deeply concerned?
No. What I'm saying is that one can't dismiss that as a kind of we're focusing on silly details.
No, it's sensational and get you clicks. I'm talking about political solutions that people actually go down and join the Republican Party or whatever in the UK and actually start talking with real political people to start to affect change. Right now, I just see talk. I'll give you an example. I've worked in pediatrics where they have a child protection unit, and in Perth, Western Australia, a very modern city. It's horrendous what goes on. Horrendous what's happening to children. So you can go right now to your local UK pediatric hospital and volunteer in some capacity because they need them. All these people tell me how concerned they are about children, but apparently going down to a child protected unit where children are suffering every day and they're being murdered, they're having their bones broken, they're having cigarettes put out of them, they're being scarred with knives. You would not believe what goes on. The point is, it's really just fear porn. It's an exciting thing to talk about rather than get into the dirty daily grind of politics to actually change things. If we can't change things, I mean, you'll sell coffee mugs, you'll sell some merch, but you're not gonna actually change until we start engaging in politics. And you can't lead with Satan worshippers. You've got to lead with things that matter.
You can say that, Brandon, but I disagree with you. I don't believe that the solution is any form of political engagement. I think it's pure disengagement. We have to disengage from the system.
That's what they want. And we talk on their bubble box. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what you just said. You're an intelligent man. To say that
you tell me, given
I told you, Mary Silva, you're not interested in Mary Silva. She's a congressional candidate that has changed the world and you don't care. I've got JSOC, joint killers, who professionally assassinate and kidnap, contacting me. All right, why? Why? Because I talk about Satan worship. They're worried about their country. And you need killers to start intimidating these people instead of sitting all day jerking off about child sacrifice. Right now, I have changed the world by focusing on espionage.
I don't jerk off about child sacrifice.
It's a jerk-off event. It gets you clicks, dude. You're not interested in changing anything. All you're interested in is this little fetish you have. I'm sick of you fuckers. Fuck yourself. Fucking git.
What is our common bond truly? Freedom. Freedom. Without freedom, you can't be a Christian no matter what denomination you belong to. You can't be a Buddhist. You can't own a donut shop. You can't drive from here to Oregon. You can't be an American because that's what it's all about, and that's the only thing that it's all about, nothing else. Nothing else. It's about freedom. Only freedom.